Hey everyone, and welcome. So, if you're learning Chinese, you've probably figured out that counting from 1 to 10 is, well, that's pretty easy. But what's the real hard part about Chinese numbers? In this explainer, we're going to unlock that secret. And I promise by the end of this, you'll be reading even some really complex numbers like a pro.
All right, so let's just dive right in. Look, most people can get 1 through 10 down in just a couple of minutes, right? E, air, san. You probably already know those. But that's just the warm-up. The real challenge, the part that trips people up, comes from just a couple of very specific, kind of tricky digits.
And here they are. The big secret to mastering Chinese numbers, it isn't about memorizing how to say million or billion. Nope, it all comes down to understanding the unique rules for just two numbers, the number 2 and the number 0. Seriously, if you can get these two right, everything else just kind of clicks into place.
So, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with that secret I just mentioned. Then, we're going to build up our foundation with the basics. After that, we'll tackle the two faces of 2, unlock the 4 crucial rules for 0, and then wrap it all up with some practice to make sure it all sticks. Sound good? Let's go! Okay, so what is the big deal with these two numbers anyway? Well, here's the thing. Unlike in English, the number 2 in Chinese can actually have 2 completely different pronunciations. And 0? It's got this whole set of rules about when you say it and when you just don't. It all depends on where it sits in a bigger number. It's kind of like a logic puzzle, but trust me, once you see the pattern, it all makes perfect sense.
But before we get into the tricky stuff, we've got to get the basics down solid. And the good news is, if you already have a decent handle on numbers 1 through 10, you're basically 90% of the way there for reading any number up to 99. Seriously.
All right, let's just do a super quick review of the basics. I'll say each one, and you can repeat after me, wherever you are. Ready? 1 is E, 2 is air, 3 sun, 4 si, 5 wu, 6 liu, 7 qi, 8 ba, 9 ju, and 10 shi. Awesome. These 10 little guys are the building blocks for literally everything else.
Okay, and here's a really cool cultural tip that I love. In China, you can actually show any number from 1 all the way to 10 using just one hand. This is so useful if you're ever in a noisy market or something. Now, some of them, like 6, 7, and 8, might look a little strange at first, but they're all designed to avoid any possible confusion. And that idea, avoiding confusion, is going to be a big theme today.
And here is some really good news. When it comes to numbers from 11 to 99, the logic is super simple. It's almost exactly like how we do it in English. You want to say 35? It's just 35, literally 3, 10, 5. 99? Easy. 9, 9, 10, 9. See? I told you. You've totally got this already.
Okay, time to dive into our first big puzzle. The number 2 in Chinese has these two different identities. There's and then there's leong. And you know what? Using the wrong one is probably one of the most common mistakes for beginners. But don't worry, we're going to clear all that confusion up right now.
So this is it. This is the big question, right? When do you use R, and when are you supposed to use liang? Let's break down the rules. It's actually simpler than you think.
So here's the main rule of thumb. You use R for counting and for place values. Think of it like when you're just listing numbers, or when 2 is part of a bigger number, like in 12 or 22. But you switch to liang when you're talking about a quantity of something, how many. It's also used for big round numbers like 2,000 or 20,000. Now there is one little weird exception. For 200, you can actually use either one, and they're both totally correct.
Okay, let's look at this in action with one single number, 2,222. This is the perfect example. See how it works? For the 2,000 part, we use liang, so liang qian. But for the 200, 20, and 2 parts, we go back to using So it's by shi, You've got both of them in the exact same number. Once you see it like this, it really does just click.
All right, you've totally conquered the two faces of 2. So now it's time for the final boss, the number 0 or ling. Okay, I know this one has a few more rules, but I promise they are all completely logical. They're all there just to make sure nobody gets confused.
And here they are, the 4 golden rules for handling 0. Think of this as your ultimate cheat sheet. We're going to walk through each one with a clear example so you can see exactly how they work in the real world.
Okay, rule number 1. Zeros at the end of a number, you can often just drop them along with their place value. So for a number like 1,100, which is 1,100, you'll sometimes hear people shorten it to just 1,100. They drop the by because the rest is just zeros. It's a common shortcut you'll hear.
Now for rule 2, and listen up, because this one is absolutely crucial. If a 0 is in the middle of a number, like in 201, you have to say it. You must read it out loud as ling. So it becomes by ling yi. Why? Well, think about it. That ling is a placeholder. If you skipped it, it would sound like 21. This little word makes sure everything is crystal clear.
And Rule 3 is here to make your life easier. What if you have a bunch of zeros in a row, right in the middle of a number, like in 1001? Well, you don't have to say ling ling. Nope, you just say ling one single time to cover all of them. So it's just Yiqian ling yi. See? Nice and simple.
And here we go, the final rule, number 4. And this one kind of ties everything together. Remember rule 1, where we could drop the end? Well, if there's a 0 in the middle of the number, that shortcut is off the table. You can't do it anymore. So for 1010, you must say the final sheet for 10. Think about it. If you didn't, it would be Yiqian ling yi, which sounds exactly like 1001. So this last rule is the final piece of the puzzle to prevent any confusion.
You are doing great. Seriously, you've now learned all the core rules for both 2 and 0. So now, it's time to put it all together. Let's practice and see how you can use this knowledge to read even bigger, more complicated numbers with no sweat. All right, here it is, our final challenge, 90,650. This one is perfect because it's got a 0 right in the middle and another one at the very end. This is the ultimate test of all the rules we just went over. Okay, your turn. How would you read this number out loud? Take a moment. Think back to those 4 rules for 0. Where does the ling go? Do you need to say that final 50 or can you drop it? Go on, give it a shot.
All right, let's break it down piece by piece. First, 90,000 is zhou wan. Easy enough. Next, we have that 0 in the thousands place, so we absolutely have to say ling. Then we have 650, which is liu bai wu shi. And now for the final test. Because of that ling in the middle, remember rule 4, we cannot drop that final part. So the whole thing together is zhou wan ling liu bai wu shi. You got it!
Okay, let's boil it all down to the absolute essentials. For the number 2, it's simple. Use liang for how many of something, like 2,000. Use er for counting and place values, like in 12 or 22. And for 0, the most important rule is this. If a 0 is in the middle, you say ling. If it's at the end, you can usually drop it, unless there was already a 0 in the middle. That's it. That's the whole system.
And that's it. You've officially made it through the hardest parts of learning Chinese numbers. You have all the tools, you understand the rules, you get the logic. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. Now that you've got this down, what's the biggest, craziest number you feel confident you could read in Chinese? Give it a try. Thanks so much for joining me.